we're streaming.
Hi, how are you doing, Kimber? Great.
Hey, that was the abbreviated version, right?
Remind everybody to turn on their mics when they
You get your mic there, Nolan.
How do you turn it up?
Yeah, right up there.
You can go ahead and put that on record, because
That's true. He won't be offended by that. That he'll take it as a source of pride.
That must be our cue to start. They always come by to repeat.
See, who do we need? Just Gina? Well, we're missing one council member, but we're also late getting started. I apologize for that. We had a workshop earlier that went longer than we expected it to do, but hopefully we got a lot done. Again, we appreciate all of you being here and are appreciative of your interest in the things that we discuss and what goes on, and we appreciate your feedback too. We'll begin our meeting this evening by having an opening presented by Councilwoman Barbara Tidwell.
Thank you. I just wanted to start out by saying that how grateful, and I think I can speak for the council, and appreciative that we are to serve the people here in Cache County. Because of the things that have gone on in the nation this past week or past week and a half, it really is a blessing to live in this valley and have good people who have a good sense of knowing what's right and standing up for it. So thank you, and I'd like to finish my comments in the form of a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered here as a council in this great valley of Cache County. We're grateful to represent the people of this great valley. We're grateful, Heavenly Father, for thy hand in establishing this great land that we live in. We do have our issues, we do have our problems, but we know it was established by thee, and we're grateful for it. We pray, Heavenly Father, for thy guidance to be with us this evening as we make decisions concerning this county and the people that reside here, that we would use wisdom and that we would use good judgment. We pray for the leaders of our nation, that they would choose good, choose right, and choose what's best for the people of this great country. And this is our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Barbara. We need to approve the agenda next, but let me first point out a typing error under, let's see, it's initial proposals for consideration. It's 12B. It says ordinance 2021-03. That should be resolution 2021-03. 2021-03.
Should it be 01?
Do we have, no, that's.
No, this is adopting the Bear River Regional Utah Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan. Should be resolution, not ordinance.
Zero.
And it's 01 on our iPads.
Oh, okay. All right, and 01. It says 03 on the,
It's a double
on this.
typo.
A double typo, yep. Anyway, with that change, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next, we need to review and approve the minutes of our last meeting, December 8th. That was a long time ago.
That was last year.
Move to dust them off.
Mr. Chairman, I
Approve
have
the
amendments.
minutes from December 8th.
Move to amend that motion. I noticed that in our county ordinance that we are required to record roll call vote on anything that's not procedural, and these minutes did not record our names for every vote that was not procedural. So I would like to have them amended to include who voted for what by name. And I would also add to that although I don't know that it's specifically mentioned anywhere, we should have included by name who attended from the public. It just says, I think 17 people attended, and I would like to have those names included. I think that's important that we know who was here.
Those are things that we haven't had on the minutes in the past.
Oh, yeah, we've had who was there, have we not, Sharon?
Have we?
Yeah,
Okay,
she's always listed them.
okay.
Yeah.
And they weren't on this one?
No, not by
I
name,
think
just
that was
number.
the, kind of some of the changes we were making to clean it up. And 6 to 1
Happy to
votes
accept
is
that
always
friendly
at least
amendment.
1 vote, so.
I'm sorry, what?
Happy to accept that friendly amendment too, so.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Gina. Any follow-up to the minutes? All right. It's time for the report of our county executive, who is over here for the time being.
We're just filling in for a little bit.
Thank you, Bryce. We're glad you are.
All right, so a couple of things we wanted to make you aware of today. First is that there's going to be 2 seats opening, one on the mosquito abatement board and another on the water district board. And these are closing soon on the 21st of January. These will be the ability to call and say, I'd like to be on that board. That ends on the 21st. And we'll have this on our next agenda. There's a couple of requirements. I'll just run over these real quick. For the mosquito abatement board, requirements are you live in the county and that you're a registered voter. Pretty simple. But for water district, it's a little more in-depth. First, you live in the county. Second, you're a registered voter. Third, you have to own water rights. And fourth, you have to make your livelihood with those water rights to be considered for that open board position. So if you know of anyone who might be good for that, we'd like to hear from them, preferably before the 21st. Second, during the interim, we had a few, is there any questions on that before I move to the next item?
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question,
Oh.
Bryce, just to make sure, on the water board, it's not tied to a specific geographical area, it's anywhere in the county.
I believe it's anywhere in the county, so it just says it's in the county.
Okay,
I'm getting
that's an outlier.
the nod from Janine back there.
This is the ag appointment,
Yep, this is
right.
the ag appointment, right.
So,
All
And
right.
anybody we can get that's a rabid opponent of mosquitoes would be great. I'd love to
If they
abate
have
them.
previous, anti-mosquito sentiments, we definitely
We definitely need somebody who wants to abate them.
Exactly. Okay. Second thing, during the long period in which we've been away, there were a couple of deputies that were appointed. These are going to require council approval for them. They've gone ahead and done the oath of office already down there, but I wanted to make you aware of who they were and allow the council to weigh in. So, first is going to be Jake D. Leonard. Second is Chad K. Sorensen, and third is Mary Dishotel. So those are the 3 people, and I guess we'll need a vote of approval for those 3.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve those 3 new deputies.
I second that.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you.
And finally, I have the warrant register that's been signed. I give this to the chair. I guess you're still a current chair.
Still there, yep. Thank you.
And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you, Bryce. Any questions for Bryce? All right, thank you. All right. I think what I'm going to do is change up the agenda a little bit. We've got 7A, the election of the council chair and vice chair. I'm going to move that down. And let's first do 7B, proclamation, school choice week, January 24th through the 30th. Is there somebody who reads well that would like to read that for the public? Or I can do it too. Nobody's volunteering, no?
I think Paul was the
Okay,
sponsor.
I'm getting it.
Got a
pulled
great
up.
voice.
Yeah, I'd love to read it. Let me get it.
All
He
right,
sings
thank you.
for a living too.
What's You ready to go, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
So proclamation, Cache County School Choice Week. Whereas all children in Cache County should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas Cache County recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Cache County to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of Cache County, and whereas Cache County is home to a multitude of high-quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home, and whereas educational variety not only helps diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community, and whereas Cache County has many high-quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options, now therefore be it resolved that the Cache County Council, State of Utah, hereby proclaims the week of January 24th through January 30th, 2021 as Cache County School Choice Week, and call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens.
Thank you, Paul. All right, do we have a motion to approve this proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That's a very good proclamation, I think. The next item, we have a special presentation to Jim Gass and to Kimber Housley for their distinguished service on the Cache County Emergency Medical Services Board of Directors, or SIMS Board, which is gone, no longer there. But we appreciate very much all that they've done. And I'll go over here to this other microphone. Thank you. That's why we have Bart here to keep us. Jim and Kimber, would you mind coming up here? And it says, in recognition of and with deep appreciation for your leadership and dedicated service as an original board member and chairman of the Cache County Emergency Medical Service Authority Board member from 2004 to 2020, that's Jim Gass. Jim, thank you very much. And not only for this, but for all of the service you've given to our communities and counties through the years. We appreciate you. And this is Kimber Housley, presented to Kimber Housley in recognition of and with deep appreciation for your dedicated service as an original board member of the Cache County Emergency Medical Services Authority Board member 2004 to 2020. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your wonderful service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to take a moment to echo that. I mean, their service to our community was unbelievable. I was only on the board for a year or two, and I don't know if my appointment to the board and the dissolution of it was coincidental or not, but the fact that Kimber and Jim were such great public servants, I really appreciated learning from them. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimber.
Good job.
Thank you again.
Do we get to leave the meeting early, or we have to sit?
Oh, no, you definitely get to leave the meeting early. You've earned that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move to 7D now, a request for extension of RAPS funding for the city of Lewiston. And we've got their letter of request in our packet here. Do we have Mayor Field here?
He's not here.
Not here? Okay, well, let's discuss this then without him. Are there any concerns about this? I think we're okay from a legal standpoint. We can extend it and not have to go go outside of the parameters set up for RAPS funding. So it's just up to us to determine whether or not we're willing to provide the extension for that $40,000 so they can continue the sports facility construction. They were delayed because of COVID and other issues in 2020, and so they've asked for another year to use those funds.
There was a lot of volunteer labor that had been done, you know, gravel leveling, all that stuff was all ready. Some forms, I mean, there's things all ready, but it's when the COVID hit and the demand in the construction world for those to be other places, a lot of those people that had committed to come in and do a lot of that for 10 cents on the dollar kind of stuff to help out, they got pulled other places and pulling the workers together, and then their celebrations were also set aside, and everything just kind of happened to where they weren't able to do it. They had it on schedule, but they got delayed, I know, out there in Lewiston. So I'd move that we approve this extension. They feel very confident that it will for surely be done, you know, by this fall. So
Great.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to continue to, in fact, unless there's an objection, I'm going to move item 7A to the end of our agenda. I think it's more appropriately handled there than it is right at the beginning, and so that we can continue on through items on our agenda that people may be here to participate in. Item 8, is there any objection to that? From anybody? Okay. Item 8A, the County Emergency Management Bear River Region Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan. Will Lusk, we'll turn the microphone to you, Will, and ask you to make your presentation to us.
Hopefully the electronics will work here for us. Council, it's good to be with you this evening for the opportunity that I have to bring before your attention the 2020 edition of the Tri-County Pre-Disaster Hazard Mitigation Plan.
You're hooked up.
when is this disaster scheduled?
What is this one? Great question. This one actually covers all different types of disasters. We have a handful of disaster, both response and mitigation and recovery plans here in our good jurisdiction. This one involves mitigation, the opportunity, or mitigation is the opportunity to take the identified disasters and hopefully make them less catastrophic, as well as, I apologize, we can probably get by without it if possible. But our goal is to try and identify what are the potential disasters out there, and what things can we do before the disaster occurs to mitigate either the disaster from occurring or mitigate the consequences of that disaster from occurring. And if it does occur, maybe to lessen the impact and the long-term effect on our beautiful jurisdiction here. This plan, and I do apologize for the electronics, it is this year one plan that they have decided is a living document, and because it is a living document and gets updated as the strategies and the operations.
Bring it up there, we can put it up there. This one won't display up there for some reason.
We just get on to the, can you just go to the Bragg website and pull it up?
It's wanting to log in. I don't know how to get the Bragg site.
This is the ArcGIS login.
It didn't like you.
Sharon, I think I could probably find it. Bragg sent me an email for that at some point. Can I forward that email?
That's where I started, yeah.
COVID disaster we had, I don't ever remember going to the command
Plus
center.
up there.
How about you?
It would have been nice. We were told what to do at that point.
We're supposed to coordinate everything from the command center, as I recall.
What we do, training, kind of together down there.
Sorry about that. We didn't have enough time to test
That's
that.
pretty,
We got Nolan here. Oh, yeah.
I always thought it was pretty effective.
I should probably say
Pretty,
Oh, yeah, it's quite interesting. But like I said.
Tony, when and I'll put you on the big screen. You
Disaster
ready?
Didn't even fit.
bunch of these.
People don't want you tight. There you go.
Super.
Ta-da.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, council.
that disaster was mitigated.
The 2020 edition of the pre-disaster mitigation plan is a living document now that is on the website. In years past, we always made hard copies and
Looks like,
tried to keep them up to date as different communities completed their strategies and operations to be more hazard resilient. This year, the Bear River Association of Government wanted to keep it a online plan just so that every time a community completed a strategy or an operation, they didn't have to put out mega copies of paper to everybody to update the plan. So for right now, the plan lives and resides on the Bear River Association of Government's website. I can get you hard copies. If you would like hard copies, we'd be happy to get them for you. But you can go to, this is just their open website. And,
Will, I need some help here.
Sure.
Either I gotta stand way back or something, but I can't recognize what that is a picture of.
Took me a while to figure out.
We've got a,
road washout.
yep, we've got a canal breach or a levee breach here that is washed out an access road to the side of the structure there, washing down in. I apologize, I don't believe that it is one of our structures here in Cache County. This plan is actually a combination of Cache, Rich, and Box Elder counties all put together into
So
one.
that's a picture of water coming out of a canal, and it's cutting a roadway, and it's kind of becoming a ravine.
Yep,
And we're gonna pin that on Box Elder.
that's right.
I mean, I sat here in this angle or something, I cannot figure out what that is.
Yep, a very important aspect of the plan in and of itself is the identification of different types of hazards and potential hazards that could exist. Most of them are entailed in this plan are all natural hazards, being the earthquake, the weather-related ones, the flooding, the drought, the crickets, the bugs, the earth itself causing problems in our life, wildfires, tornadoes. There's about 30 different hazard types identified. Even climate change is addressed in here. There we go. What this plan has attempted to do is two things. One, identify all the various types of hazards that are in the area surrounding and included in our 3 counties here. Look at historical events that have taken place over all those years, as well as try and encompass looking into the future based upon that look back, what we might anticipate and the likelihood of all those different types of disasters. Using engineering practices. Each of the disaster types were analyzed and given through a mathematical analysis, given a profile, a likelihood for both exposure, the probability, and then the impact or severity of all those disaster types upon our top 3 counties here. This table here, you'll find in it, and it takes all those different types of hazards and puts a number to them.
How were the numbers assigned? I mean, what data was used to provide the score or the number?
Yep, the data once more was based on studies both from the Department of Agriculture, U.S. Geological Survey, FEMA floodplain analysis. There was probably a dozen or so different studies that have gone into this from all different types of hazards. It kind of brings them all together and lumps them all into one plan. Also, our historical data here in the in Cache County, it was utilized where what we have experienced over the last 80, 100 years or so, both the financial as well as the natural impacts to our society here. And that was assigned a number. Most of the numbers were based on numbering system 1 through 5, with 1 being least likely and 5 the highest probability. And then that was compared for both the exposure, the probability, and then once more the severity of each type of disaster. It was given a rating.
Thank you.
And in the end, let me see if I can get to the end here. There was a combined risk and a way, kind of a quick snapshot that now you can have all those disaster types and put them side by side and say, okay, what is the most likely or the most probable that we will have to deal with here in Cache County? And as you look at the combined risk score, lo and behold, probably it shouldn't be too surprising to us that our most likely and once more historically hazard that we have dealt with over all the years is severe weather. Whether it's the windstorm like we experienced back in September, or the snowstorm, or the lack thereof being drought conditions, the weather itself is our primary hazard initiator. Next after that comes wildfire, floods, and eventually we get to probably our greatest catastrophic nemesis, being the earthquake. Right there in the middle, yep. And then some of the other hazards are identified in there as well. What that does is it gives us a tool. Once more, if we had the county council magic crystal ball and we could look into it and say, when is the next disaster going to be, day, time, and where it will hit, it would really be nice to know that information. That way we could prepare now and have things in place to respond to it. But since we don't have that magical device, we have to use plans and studies like this to give us our best shot, and to give us guidance on what to prepare, when to prepare, and how much to prepare for it. That's what the pre-disaster mitigation plan is all about. It not only identifies and ranks and gives us that look at what those hazards are, but the second half to it, it gives the entities that adopt and utilize this plan the opportunity now to use strategies and different operations to mitigate and to get ready for and to hopefully help avoid these disasters and disaster types. In the other sections, there's a section, and once more, every jurisdiction, even the unincorporated area, had the opportunity to participate in putting this plan together. For us here in Cache County, just about every one of our municipal organizations, as well as the county as a whole, had an opportunity to give input to mitigation strategies for this plan. For example, I'm going to pick the unincorporated Cache County area here. Once more, as part of the plan, get it to scroll down for us. Once more, they don't want to talk to us. We had an opportunity to take a look at the unincorporated areas in regards to those disaster types, and strategizing with Public Works, with the Cache County Fire District, with law enforcement agencies and other volunteer agencies. We put a few strategies down into black and white for some of the most likely hazards and disasters, and said, what should we start doing now to help the process along, so that if or when these do occur in the future, we can lessen their impacts. If you get a chance to peruse the document, especially these strategies, you'll see that a lot of them have to do with codes, enforcement and adoption, and use of codes for building, where we build and how we build in the wildland-urban interface, as well as along our rivers, in our floodplains. A lot of it, once more, goes hand in hand with code compliance and proper building and construction. I know we all don't like codes and being told what we can and cannot do with our property, but after 25 years of being out there on the sides of rivers and the bottom of mountains, experiencing the canal landslide in Logan back in 2009, and even our last flood scenario in 2017, I'm here to tell you that even though we are very good as a society in building things, we are not as good as nature is at being able to build something to withstand the forces of nature. It is still very prudent not to build in some places. It is still very prudent to build a certain way if we are going to build in some places, as well as there are good codes and rules and regulations to follow when we choose to build in those locations. A recent study was just released by the federal government along the lines of mitigation and financial studies based upon outcomes and dollars and cents that were spent recovering from disasters. A new study that was just released from the Federal Emergency Management Association said that for every dollar spent on mitigation, you save $6 in recovery costs. And a lot of that too goes back to proper construction and not constructing certain types of buildings and have certain occupancies in hazard zones. One of the other features of the disaster hazard mitigation plan is the maps that go along with it. Once more, each of the different types of hazards that were identified in the plan has a each of the hazard types has a map. For example, if you wanted to see where in the Cache Valley area I apologize. Oh, there they are right there. I apologize. But contained in it are maps both from U.S. Geological Survey, seismic folks down in both Salt Lake City and back east, as well as our friends that monitor the rivers, the waterways. One of the nice things about the plan is it gives you an opportunity to point your finger to the map and say, based upon this given location, what hazards do I need to worry about? It is a nice tool that can be used both by community planners as well as by even our good citizens wishing to locate a piece of property or have a piece of property and have the question, what if I choose to live or build here, what do I need to worry about? It is a nice tool. I apologize that my inability to manipulate it tonight doesn't give you the full view and the potential of it, but I'm here this evening in support of this plan because it does three very important things. One, it does identify those things down the road that we need to take into consideration as we continue to live and enjoy the great county that we reside in. Two, it also gives us the opportunity to look to the future. And as we begin to build, to live, and to recreate in areas that normally in the past have been relatively empty and quiet, once more it brings to our attention things that we need to be cognizant of. And then last but not least, this plan gives us the opportunity to take a look at those things that we think will impact us the most and then move forward from here with what can we do to prepare for it. certainly we don't have the magical crystal ball to know when the next pandemic or the next wildfire or the next earthquake or the next flood is going to occur. I wish we did. It would make not only my job a whole lot easier, but certainly it would make all our lives better. But it's just not out there yet. Maybe someday down the road somebody will invent it, but right now we don't enjoy that. But once more, we have the opportunity to utilize plans and to prepare and take our best guess. And that's what this plan is all about, is it is that tool in our hands to do just that, as well as one of the most important post-disaster activities is the recovery aspect. By adopting this plan and utilizing this plan in our county, it leaves us open and eligible for public assistance from the federal government if or when said disasters do occur in our jurisdiction. One of the requirements set forth in the Robert T. Stafford Act, which is the federal document that governs post-disaster response by the federal government, is the requirement that the community have adopted and utilize a pre-hazard disaster mitigation plan. And by you as a council adopting this plan, which also, by the way, has been already approved by FEMA and the state of Utah, by you adopting it, it keeps our county eligible for post-disaster, both recovery and hazard mitigation funding from the federal government. Any questions any of you have?
Define hazard or disaster. Is it based on dollar amount? I mean, an avalanche isn't a disaster unless life is gone or destruction of some property. So I'd like to have the scope or how that's defined.
Yeah, both hazard and disaster do have definitions. We can find them, and I think they should also be included in this plan in the appendices. There are times when things happen in life. I'll use the pandemic as my example. The pandemic has affected our lives each in different ways. Some may look upon it as a financial hardship. Others have lost loved ones. Others have seen it as a nuisance to their lives, while still yet others are still wondering what is going on. Events affect us in different ways. When does it become a disaster versus an event? It all depends on, one, individual preparedness, two, what's going on in your life at the time, and then three, how you respond to it. Case in point, going home tonight, you could walk in the kitchen door and find the kitchen sink overflowing. To an individual such as myself, I don't have plumbing experience, and other than calling my wife and saying, "Dear, what's going on here?" To me, it's probably a nuisance and a hazard. To my wife, it's probably a disaster because she just spent $8,000 putting in new flooring and cabinets. And I can only imagine what water's going to be doing on the floor and destroying that again. Once more, from individual perspective, it does vary. If you were caught in the avalanche and lost your life, it would be a very different scenario than traveling up the road where the avalanche has stalled traffic or stopped traffic. What defines it really, Nolan, to me, is where you're at and your perspective in life. Part of the emergency management process, once more, is to do just that, is to identify potential hazards out there and to prepare and to help our communities organizations and families be to a status where we can be, one, ready as best we can, best guess. Two, have things in place to get through, and then three, come out the other end a little bit more resilient. The pre-disaster hazard mitigation plan, once more, is the tool that'll help us put operations into place to help our communities and our society become more disaster resilient. It won't make us disaster proof because we can't identify every possible and potential hazard or disaster out there, but hopefully we'll be more resilient to the ones that we can and do identify and prepare for.
Will, I have a question for you. Has this committee or this project ever considered an electrical disaster? You know, we hear about hardening the grid and that type of thing. I know that's not maybe a natural disaster, but is that something that they have or would consider?
Yep, one of the secondary effects of different types of disasters is utility disruption. Whether it's the windstorm that sends trees down on the power lines or knocks out the internet or the telephone, utilities are always susceptible in one form or shape to natural disasters. They are considered in wildland fires. They are considered in part of the earthquake response. They are considered in the storm response aspects. Usually there's something that causes the utility to go down, and that's usually how they're classified then. Whether it's a terrorism type event or a cybersecurity event that takes it down, those aspects are not discussed in deeply as in this plan, because this plan mainly deals with natural hazards. Our county emergency response plan, though, talks about utility disruptions as well as cybersecurity and terrorism events.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I got one. I was curious as to the mapping that you're using when they created the mitigation plan here. Is that the same mapping systems? I'm sure it is, that we're using in development services. So everything's for our planning. I mean, everything should be cross-referenced completely, right?
Yep.
There's no, so that we don't jump into one area when you say, hey, this is a high-risk area, and we've pretty well already established that too because of cross-correlation, right?
Yep. Most of the maps that you'll find in here are put out by both state and national, government agencies. U.S. Geological Survey, they use standard geographical information system mapping, which the nice thing is it overlays onto the mapping systems that we utilize here in our planning planning department in Cache County, and allows us to take those maps and to overlay them or to display them one on top of each other in different layers so that we can compare where we're at and what we're doing, as well as, once more, take a look at a future property that somebody wishes to develop and say, how close is it to a FEMA floodplain? Or how close is it to a earthquake fault line? Or how close is it to the wildland urban interface that has been identified by those federal and state agencies? It is a great planning tool that puts the information in our hands to take a look at those while we're contemplating those other things. Great questions.
And maybe to follow up on what Dave was saying, those are a lot of times historical maps that we're using, where I get to do this every day, all day in a lot of ways. I think we need to maybe figure out a way to look at some predictive maps. A lot of the modeling companies, especially coming out of the California wildfires, I know we were pretty high. It was interesting to see how high we were. I think the market's pricing that as well, but I think those, if we use historical WI, those wildland urban interfaces, a lot of the predictive modeling is gonna be significantly different than that. So from the developmental services standpoint, be aware of that we could use a historical map that's gonna allow us to build up into some areas that may be predictive as saying that would not be advisable.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on that would be a great thing to do.
Yep. We also have day-to-day tools that do just that. On our major rivers here in Cache County, we have river gauges. Up in the major drainages here on our east bench, we have snow tell sites that tell us the depth of the snow and the water moisture content, as well as we get to couple those with what is flowing currently down the river and or predicted. And they are two very important tools, especially when we start talking flooding, that not only we can use here locally as we look maybe to the next spring runoff. What is the potential? That's a question I get oftentimes asked every spring, is what's the potential for flooding this year? And using those predictive tools, both used by the National Weather Service, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the Division of Water Rights here in the state of Utah, we can utilize those tools, gauges, and men and women's best guess to hone in on how bad might be, or when the river is predicted to come up, and how high might it run. Yep, great tools are emerging out there in all different fields and technology that become tools in our hands to help predict. If we could have a magic crystal ball, that's probably the closest thing right now that could define that type of a tool, would be those predictive models and measuring devices that give us real-time measurements of what's happening and what is out there. Yep.
All right, well, thank you, Will. We appreciate that very much.
You bet.
Very informative. Okay, next on our agenda, we have 3 public hearings to set for January 26th, our next meeting. Mosquito Abatement District vacancy, the Cache Water District Board vacancy, and Ordinance 2021-01, amendments to Title 17 of the Cache County Code regarding cannabis production establishments.
I noticed, Mr. Chairman, these don't have a time. Do we need to specify a time for these?
No, we don't have to specify that, but it'll come out in the...
It'll just come on the agenda. I move... Do we need...
Yeah,
For which one?
for any ordinance.
For any of them?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I know for the land use that's the case.
Yeah,
but
okay,
I'm
for the
pretty sure
ordinance.
that's pretty accurate for most ordinances. You need to specify a time and place.
All right.
They can't be any earlier than 6, is it? 5:30.
Yeah.
So do we want to do the appointments for the districts at like 5:20 or something, so we can hit those pretty quick?
Yeah,
5:15?
I would say that.
And maybe set the other one a little bit later in the meeting. That'll be a nice one to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So 5:20, 5:25, and 5:30?
Well, Mr. Chairman, then I'd make a motion that we set the public hearing for the mosquito abatement district at the next scheduled council meeting at 5:20. Set the Cache Valley Water District Board vacancy at 5:23, and then for the ordinance 2021-01 at 5:30.
Okay.
I'll second. Go ahead, Barbara.
Go ahead, second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Rabid mosquito person.
We have some initial proposals for consideration of action. Ordinance 2021, however, What did we miss here? Let's see it. We have, let's jump down to 12B first, ordinance 2021-03. It's actually resolution 2021-01, adopting the 2020 Bear River Region Utah Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan that we've just been educated on.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to waive the rules and adopt ordinance 2021-03.
Resolution.
That's the one, that's the resolution.
Yeah, that's on the resolution.
Okay, we'll change that to the adopt the resolution 2021-03, the Bear River.
Oh, one. It's also numbered wrong.
Yeah, but on the agenda or items on
On
the
the
agenda,
resolution itself?
It's listed as 03.
We adjusted that in a minute.
So what's right or what's wrong?
Yeah.
It was amended.
2101, resolution
I'm reading the agenda, so that's.
It was amended at the beginning of the meeting. So it's resolution 2021-01.
Okay, 01.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, let's go back now to ordinance 2021-02, an ordinance to repeal resolution 2015-20 and revise and update the county's manual of roadway design and construction standards and amend related portions of the county code. I don't know if you all spent the hours I did reading through those amendments to the road design and construction standards. That was a lot of reading. And the Planning Commission recommended denial because of the lack of having, or the need to have everything paved and not allowing for gravel roads. So, again, this is an initial proposal. We have the opportunity here, we can discuss it and determine people's feelings on what direction you'd like to go, or we can waive the rules and approve it, or disapprove it.
Based on what I heard in planning and zoning, I'd like to discuss it.
Okay?
That's me, but others can decide.
No, that'd be good. That'd be good. John, are you gonna be able to learn to play the piano and the guitar once we finish this up? You'll have so much free time after that, right?
And sing, don't forget that part.
And sing. Get all 3
Yep.
lessons.
What are the feelings of the council?
Well, as I read it, it's changed enough that if someone that's down a gravel road wants to add a home, the way this ordinance is written, unless I'm not interpreting it right, we now will require them to pave the road to their property so that they will qualify for a building permit. However, there's a provision in it where there's some money that can be paid into the county in a fund, and that money will sit in that fund until it's the right time to pave the road.
That can last, they can
And it
only
can
hold
go
it for 12 years.
Up to 12 years, and then it can have a chance to be reviewed and maybe extended. Each one of us knows if we pass this ordinance that there's going to be a lot of concern among the county residents when they want to come in and develop their land way down the gravel road, because it will cause a huge outlay of cash in order to do that. But at the same time, I don't think we as the county council representing the citizens want to take the taxpayers' money and start building roads, to a property. And so after all the discussion and all the challenge that we've had through the years, this is probably the leap forward that needs to be done. And I feel really, really sad for those people that has this big dream of building a home down a gravel road, and because of the cost of asphalt, it's not gonna be able to do it, but I don't know how else to protect the taxpayer in this situation. And I'm imagine that's probably the long discussion that they had at planning and zoning, is that right, Nolan?
Pretty much. There was an instance that Phil Olson brought up in Paradise that I wanted to drill down further based on John's illustration and stuff on there, because fee in lieu, which you were talking about, but to me, does this, can I speak?
Please do, yeah.
Does this, I mean, for instance, on Phil's example, 2 blocks down, they were gonna build a house. If I owned that land that butted up against the county road where it was oiled, what stops me from doing a private road and getting out of this? And so then do we end up putting a bunch of branches of private roads for people who are saying, I don't wanna pay for this asphalt? I don't think we've looked at that part. Or the other part that came to me is, if this person was the first one on the street, but yet there were 5 or 6 houses after him, what's the solution if he went past those 5 or 6, then he pays for that, but the others come in? That's where I'm unclear as well. So those 2 areas I had points that I wanted clarified on. Does that make sense?
It's been the real concern when,
And we spent a lot of time discussing all of those scenarios.
Well, I don't want to rehash what you've gone
No,
over.
that's
I
okay.
think we should talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about the private road though, because I don't recall.
well, I don't think the ordinance will allow someone to just skirt the county road and make a private road, because they still got a building permit, and I don't know if it's written in the ordinance that they would not be allowed to do that, but it probably should address it.
But you can have a private road that allows you up to 5 houses with gravel, if you have a private road, because they talked about HOAs and the other thing. And when I came to the hearing on it, they were talking about, if I have a private road, then I can put up to 5 houses on that before, and that can be gravel. So if that's true, are we pushing people to go to a private road?
That needs discussion, doesn't it?
Can you have a private road that crosses, well, if I have a lot, if I have 5 acres and you have an adjoining 5 acres, that private road can go from my land onto your land? Or
Only with
would we-
agreement between the 2 owners, can
Okay.
it?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Well, I think one of the biggest issues we've been trying to address here is maintenance of the roads once they're in. A gravel road requires a road grader to clear the snow, which is a lot more expensive for the county than a plow truck. And so that's one of the issues. The other issue is garbage pickup and being able to access those things. And I guess I'm thinking about it, if it's a private road, then you don't have, the county isn't obligated to provide those services. That's up to whoever the private road owners are. And they provide their own services as far as snow removal and those kinds of services. And so the county isn't carrying a heavier cost.
Private roads still have to be maintained to a standard of safety, of width,
Yeah.
whatever they're cared for, either by privately to get to the home, it still has to maintain a level of safety for emergency services.
But in the
Nolan, that's a really good point.
in the example of an HOA, if you buy a home and it's in an HOA, you pay yourself for snow removal, you pay yourself for road maintenance and upkeep, and all of those costs are covered by the people who are part of the HOA. It's not a burden on the taxpayers.
I understand that, but if you are unfortunate enough to buy into an HOA that is not cooperating or working,
Yeah,
it becomes a huge issue. And Paul's point of 2 pieces of property, I could be pretty convincing to talk that other property owner, if I build a private road on yours to get access to mine, you can also build a house on there if we limit it to 5. And now skirted the issue of a county road and gone to a private road, and so now I've got tons of private roads everywhere. And I'm just seeing this as a factor of saying, okay, I get out of paying for asphalt.
And I'm sure a lot of HOAs would love to give the county some roads.
Oh, I know they would.
We would love to give you some
And
assets.
that's why we have to be diligent and not give into it. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, it's also been proven and discussed quite heavily that the majority of the HOAs don't work. And so
right.
it's best to stay away from them.
yeah.
And, I mean, we had our county attorney a number of years ago say they just aren't working. He said they aren't working. Pretty soon they're in fault, the roads are bad, and the county ends up having to do something. And so we don't want that. We don't want that opportunity to be there. And if we are allowing them to build a private road to the side of the county road to get to these properties and develop, we probably ought to close that loophole.
I would agree too. Yeah.
And that's still gonna make people mad, but when it all comes down to it, the situation is such that these HOAs don't work. Works fine when they buy the home, but then 10 years later, when they need to re-chip and seal them and stuff like that, there's no money in the HOA, so then the road just turns worse and worse and worse. And as a council, we ought to look very closely at closing that loophole.
Well, and there's a problem, because if your HOA isn't operating, when you purchase that property, that CC&R is supposed to be given to you, but I have seen many occasions where that has not been given, and the home buyer buys the house without understanding of HOA fees, the scope of what the HOA has, and of the road and everything else, so.
Still goes back to buyer beware situation.
It does, but then after the fact, they're screaming and saying, well, I didn't know that, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the idea, because we need to watch that, but as I listen to planning and zoning, and this was presented when I was on planning and zoning, I mean, just like Gordon says, it's probably something that needs done, but, because the cost, I mean, I don't know the cost of doing asphalt, because before you asphalt it, you've got to have so much base and everything else, shoulders and everything else, so you're talking a pretty good cost, which almost incentivizes private roads, or figuring out another way to get there and not having that. So I just want to be aware of that. I'm not saying it happens, I'm just saying that was the first thing that comes to my mind.
It has to be controlled in the building permitting process. That's where it has to be.
Well, what's then the answer? I mean, I think the planning commission's issue was
The cost.
the cost, and to go ahead and allow gravel roads, but then that throws cost back onto the county. Increased cost for snow removal and other services that more expensive on a gravel road. So I guess, I don't know what.
My point was the private road. I agree with the cost, and I'm with Gordon that I think this is a step to the right direction, but I don't want, to me, I was sitting there thinking, well, what if I was not the first person to build a house, but I build after the others? How do we come back now and say, in fee and lieu, you've got to asphalt in front of your house? And so if I've covered the ones who have lots and who has houses, who covers the bare spot that's not got any lots or anything on there? That becomes a point of contention, as well as we have got to be careful on the private roads. Does that make sense?
I have that same question, is how's it fair to charge the pink guy up there to put it in front of his house and then come back with county money and put it in front of the yellow house and the empty lot in order to reach the guy in the pink house who put a payment in lieu of doing it, and later we come back and go in front of those other owners? What am I missing something? Because that seems really unfair to me.
You know what was going on in P&Z, and you know what Phil talked about, so I'm talking about.
But I need you to kind of refresh my memory on, so I can drill down on Phil's.
Paradise, a person wanted to build a house past the county oiled road about 2 blocks. But past that house were 3 or 4 more houses. And so this person, because he was the first one to come in after the ordinance is passed, has got to pave 2 blocks of road only to his house, but it doesn't go past to the other 3 and 4. What if this person built past those 3 and 4? Where's the responsibility of going? And that wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, let me do my best to answer that scenario and some others. And before talking about specific scenarios, just talk about the principle that underlies them. That if the development that the person is doing, I'll say you, if you're doing a development, if your development imposes a burden on the county, then you can be asked to bear the cost of that burden. And it's called an exaction. We can exact from you property or money to cover the additional burden that you're putting on the county. And so a non-monetary exaction is if you're going to build on the road and our minimum road standard is 66-foot right-of-way and the county only has a 20-foot right-of-way, you can be asked to dedicate additional frontage of your property to the road so that the county can then have the road that we've deemed is necessary if you're going to have a home on it. So we have exactions in the form of you got to dedicate some land to the right-of-way. Because you get to dedicate that land because you're the one building there. That means that we now need that wide of a road. If the county determines that for safety and aesthetic and whatever reasons, primarily safety though, that this type of road is necessary where there's development, then if you're going to be the one to develop, we didn't need a road that meets those specifications until you chose to build there. So you can be expected to bear the cost of that burden that you're putting on the county. Does that idea make sense? Because that's the idea that underlies this. So I've put up here so that maybe we can just talk through different examples. If the current county road is to standard to here and we're traveling down the road this way, here's the direction that progress is being made. We've already got a home on this lot, but you want to build on the yellow lot there. You are the first one, and we'll assume that these other lots don't have anything on it. You're the first one past where the road is to standard. Well, the road didn't need to be to standard until you built there, so we can expect you to bring the road up to standard. And that is a settled question. You can be expected to bring your road up to standard. The question here is, what should that standard be? Should the standard continue to be 12 or 20-foot wide gravel surface, or should it be a paved surface? Either way, the first person down the road is going to need to bring the road up to standard. If the first person past this line where it's already up to standard, if that first person is down here, well, we can ask them to improve the road up to their spot because they're the one creating the burden. They're the one creating the need for that road to be brought up to standard. There's nobody else in between yet. They're creating the need. That, again, is settled in the law that we can ask for that. And again, the question is, what will that standard be?
John, does that include if there's the blue house and the green house, and then the pink house comes along and they have to improve it all the way to their lot? Or are you just talking on the one side of the road with blue, yellow?
Yeah, so maybe we'll get rid of this for a moment and say, now the first person to build is right here, the first person beyond the road. Yeah. Okay, here's where we're at. These folks want to build. They can be asked to improve the road to standard up through the end of their frontage. Now, we've just said all that, but here's the quirk in current Cache County Code. We say that there can be 3 homes on a gravel road, and then the 4th home has to be paved. That's the current code. And so what the road manual that you've asked for us to prepare, you asked us to prepare that it be pavement for everything, really is just saying Well, we've been letting the first 3 by on gravel, but then we're requiring pavement for the 4th. And you've asked us to prepare a version that now would say, actually, the very first home gets to do pavement. And the practical difficulty with how it's been is that, sure, these first 3, the yellow, the blue, and the pink, didn't have to pave. And now we say, well, but the 4th one's got to pave. But then you look at it and say, well, we can't expect them to pave the gap because the need for a road to standard was there already. They didn't create the need. These other homes were there and they created the need. And so now we can ask them to pave their frontage, but then we've got pavement, gravel, pavement, and so don't require them to pave it. And so now we've ended up with, although the 4th home should be pavement and the 5th home, we've got areas in the county where, nope, it's just all unpaved because we didn't want to require them once we got to that point. One of the things that this road manual would do is say that, well, yeah, we still can't require them to pave the gap, and so we don't want them to pave theirs yet. But when we've got money to pave the gap, we'd still like them to have paid the money to pave in front of theirs. So we take a fee in lieu for what it would cost them to pave their frontage and hold that till we've got the budgeted funds to go in and pave the whole thing.
So can I throw in another wrinkle?
Yeah, I want to answer one question of Gina's though before we get there. And that is, well, if these guys didn't pave, why should this guy have to pave?
Yeah, that's, because I know that's how it will seem to the guy in the green, right?
If that argument would carry the day, then whatever the road standards were when Cache County became a county, that's all everybody has to do because, well, you changed the law, but I don't want it to apply to me. At some point, if we say, well, here's the new standard, then people who build after we implement the new standard, they have to meet it, even though the guy that built last year didn't have to meet it. And so that's the simple answer, is that if you build after we change the law, the new law applies to you, the old law applied to them.
Thank you.
I don't think legally we can charge people once we've already gave them permit and the home's built. So there we sit. But I think what John's trying to teach us and share with us here, that at some point we gotta buckle up and make something happen so that they don't continue on. And the other thing to remember is that every right-of-way in Cache County has been identified as a 66-foot right-of-way, even though it's not being used. And so when you've got people that are unwilling to dedicate in that legally, there's a 66-foot right-of-way in front of their house, whether they want to accept it or not. And we just need to continue on with what we're doing, but it's already been established that that's the way it was when the pioneers came and put it together. Some people will want to litigate that, but that's the way the law reads, as I understand.
Nolan, who brought it up?
Phil Olson.
Phil Olson's question, I believe, was a scenario where there's already some homes down the county road, it's gravel, and then someone wants to come and build here.
Right there.
But it's actually a couple of blocks down. If these folk, this is the way I interpret the law, and I've been on the phone with the property rights ombudsman at the state a number of times just to make sure that I'm not clear off in left field on these things. Some of these issues we can't know definitively because they haven't been litigated to get the Utah Supreme Court to give us the definitive answer. So some of these things we're giving our best guess as to what the Utah Supreme Court would say if things were litigated. But I can say that I think I'm on the same page with the property rights ombudsman on the issues that we're talking about. These folks who now come in and want to build, we can't ask them to pave the gap because there's already been the need. right? It's that question of, are you creating the need? Are you imposing the burden? Since there have been homes down the road already, those homes have already created the need for this road to be at whatever standard we want. We can still ask these folks to bear the cost of their frontage. Now, arguably, maybe we could ask them to pave that as well, because they're the first ones to build down there after we've upped the standard. But I think we're on a little shakier ground on that.
Wasn't that what was discussed in P and Z though, is he had to carry that from the asphalt to his property?
And when we say he had to carry it, that means we told him as the county.
Right.
And I guess as I wasn't aware of that situation, and I'm not wanting to point fingers at anyone, but if anyone came and asked me today, I think I would say we're on shakier ground to ask them to pave the gap, but we certainly can ask them to pave their frontage.
So no, that makes more sense to what I'd heard. If you're just, because now you're gonna say, because you wouldn't go asphalt, gravel, asphalt, you would say fee in lieu.
Correct.
Until we get it. But in Phil's discussion, as I heard it, and what Brady Christensen was talking about, that's 2 blocks of asphalt we're asking somebody to pay for. And Matt, is Matt here? Yeah. Did you happen to get a cost estimate on that? Because that was a big part of the discussion too.
I did get some numbers I can share with the council.
Because we're talking 3-inch asphalt, road base, everything, right?
And I put you off, Gina. I'm happy to come back at the appropriate time.
Okay, no worries.
Chairman, if it's all right, if I can address the private road issues too, while I'm here, it seemed like that was a hot topic.
That would be helpful, thank you, Matt.
If you come in and you want to build, the development code still says that anywhere that your property touches a county road, you're required to improve it. So if you choose to come in and build, and you wanted to build a private road out through your property, that is fine, but whatever it touches, you're still gonna be on the hook to improve it and pave it, so I don't think it's gonna incentivize people to create a lot of private roads when they'd have to build 2 roads as opposed to 1. Now, the connections and stuff like that, depending upon where these lots are, if they're going back, part of that would come into the development issue of where do we want our county roads to go. And if people are trying to create private roads where we need our grid system to go, then that would be during the subdivision process. Currently, most of our subdivisions that come in are done on private roads, so in my limited experience, I think some of these changes that we're proposing will actually limit the private roads coming in. So.
Define frontage then, because if I was the Orange House and you told me I gotta pay, I'd skirt the issue and build a road and put my house back off of the county road and do a private road into there.
You'd still have to pave it along the orange portion.
Even, that's what I'm saying, so my frontage is not how far I set back, it's what is aligned with the road.
It's what's touching the county right away.
Okay.
So if you're on a corner lot, that could be this side and this side, regardless of where your access is.
What if someone split that lot or basically changed the lot type to where that frontage is now, basically very limited?
Right.
And then you took the private road further off.
So most of those, and Chris can step in too if this gets into the subdivision and zoning questions. But if you're going to come and split a lot, usually there's a process for it, and usually those processes would kick you to meet the road standards. So if you're coming in to do a subdivision and you want to split 3 lots and you want to make a small one, that's still going to create every property that touches that subdivision is going to be required to follow the road standards.
And before you give us the numbers, will you first of all share the difference between paved versus chip seal?
Paved would be a hot asphalt mix that comes from a plant. The chip seal that we talk about is basically a treatment, like a preservation.
Which is what most of the, I should say, the rural county roads are chip seal. That's right.
And we call that a double chip seal, where you're using some bigger rock with a lot of oil and you come back with more rock. So basically what we're doing is just putting a rock and oil and trying to make a sandwich that's rock and oil, that's very similar to an asphalt mix. The county's very good at that, so we could do that relatively inexpensively compared to hot asphalt mix. They behave different, you know, you're not gonna wanna do a double chip seal or that type of.
Maintenance difference?
For a lot of our county roads, those double chip seals work very well.
And why I bring that up is that for the mere fact that, you know, we're requiring paved.
Right.
But is chip seal, double chip seal, is that adequate?
So
If it's cheaper.
In our discussions, it's very labor intensive. So in the summertime, and Joel could comment on this too, pretty much everyone that we have that works at the county road department gets taken off of doing culverts and pipes and signage and other projects, and they're all there to facilitate the chip seal progress. So we have people that are driving trucks, we have oil, and it's a very labor intensive process. We're good at it, but you take a LeGrand, and they don't really do chip seals. You'll see them on the freeway, so that some of these bigger companies that are gonna go do large stretches, there is a few, but I don't think if you're a homeowner and you wanted to come in and chip seal that, I'll bet you it would cost you more money to have a small chip seal.
That's what I was wondering.
And you're gonna have to come back, the next year and do another one. So by the time you do all that, you haven't saved anything, and you still have to prepare all the road. Only the difference you have is the asphalt versus a double chip seal.
Matt, would the manual as we've written it allow double chip seal if a homeowner insisted that's what they wanted?
We've had, in my experience and what I've been told and when we've discussed it, is that most of the chip seals that we see are not performed very well. So as we start allowing that, you're gonna get poor quality, and then, you know, tearing it out over time, those are degrading the oil quality, the rock. So for us, it's better to get an asphalt that's easily for us to inspect, where this is probably gonna be done by, you know, developers, homeowners, those types of things. That's gonna be easier for us as a county to manage those types of projects in small quantities. So,
Thank you.
So again, the road standards that we're changing and the current standards that we have, all of them require 14 inches of pit run underneath those roads. So that part is not changing. It also requires 6 inches of road base, so that's not changing. So if we would allow that and stop that for a gravel road, then your added expense would be the 3 inches of asphalt. And quotes that I got just as recent today, depending upon your volume, you know, if you're doing a short road, a short frontage, you're gonna get a little more, it's gonna cost you a little bit more than if you're doing a long frontage. But those are about $1.25 to $1.50 a square foot. So if anyone, you wanna take out your calculators and estimate that that's a 20-foot wide road at say $1.50 to be conservative, then that's $30 a lineal foot for road. So if you had a 300-foot frontage along your property, then that asphalt's gonna cost you $9,000 to pave along the frontage of your 300-foot wide lot. So that's the cost that we're either putting in fee in lieu of, or that if they're the first house, then they would be required to provide that for the county. So if you're looking at the full road sections, which, you know, if we wanted to look at the whole cost for a whole road, you're about $4. So about $1 for the pit run and about 75 cents for the road base. So if you do that, you're, instead of the so that's your cost. So $1, $1.50, and then 75 cents for the road base. But our road standards are you got to put those in no matter what. So
Matt,
does that help?
how many gravel roads in the county that we have homes on, and maybe you don't know this, but are adequately built with shoulder space as well?
Actually, a lot of our gravel that we just have gravel, the shoulders aren't that terrible because the gravel has spilled and spilled and spilled, so they're actually just straight gravel roads. The shoulders aren't that bad. It's where we have a fence or something where we haven't been able to grade out where we probably don't have the shoulders or if there's a drainage ditch next to it. I've looked for examples like this on a county road where we have, most of our county roads end in a dead end somewhere. We do have some gravel ones that continue around. Where you have 3 or 4 houses on a gravel road and someone's going to come in and have to pave a long portion in the county, I can't find that many examples. Really where this is going to apply is where people are expanding and building new county roads, or they're pushing stuff outside of what we've typically seen as county. You're taking it up the hill, you're taking it, out Stink Creek in Clarkston, or you're taking it up a canyon road. Those are the places where we're going to see potentially some of this, but any other questions?
Well, I can think of 2 places, and this is all paradise, but if you take the road to Porcupine from where you turn off of 165, or if you keep going straight to Liberty, it seems that asphalt road is already too small anyhow, so.
You're correct, it is.
What do we do in those instances?
As John explained, a lot of those is, if someone's already came and developed, that's what the road is, then we can't usurp that, that's not their impact. If the road is already there, it's already functioning, you have traffic going up and down it, we can only hold them accountable for their impact, and usually that's going to be limited to their frontage. So.
Matt, what system do you have in place or foresee that we would figure out, like you're holding a lot with in lieu of,
okay,
and then you need to pave in between, so like you need to pave in front of the yellow, let's say. How do you figure out when and how that gets done?
So the road department has a 5-year maintenance plan. It might extend to about 6 years, but 5 to 6, maybe 7 in some rural areas, where every one of those roads is chip sealed. So on our plan, as we're rotating through the county to do our preservation, our maintenance preservation, one of these roads such as this, that where you have this money and we're coming through in a 5-year, 6-year period, I foresee that's where you put that out. So a lot of these roads are going to get put on a 5-year plan, or if it happens to be a road that's on our 3-year plan, that's when those things will take place. So, if you just missed it and we just chip sealed your road and now you built on it, or we did some maintenance on your road, you might have to wait 6 or 7 years before us to get back to that rotation. But that's our goal, and so we actually have a plan prepared that we'd like to come and present to the council of our chip seal plan for this year, and maybe even expand that to the next year so that you guys can see which roads that the county's planning. But Joel's done a very, very great job of rotating all those roads so that all of our roads are getting, their maintenance on a continuous cycle. So.
Thanks, Matt.
What if Orange goes back and builds past Green? Orange only pays for what's in front, and we do cash fee in lieu there because he's not going to build or pave the gap.
Go a step at a time so I make sure I understand. Orange here?
Orange goes and builds past Green, so he's the first one after the ordinance is in.
He builds out here?
Yes.
And these haven't built yet?
No, they're there.
Oh, okay.
So he goes past the houses that are there. Where is the fee, or what is he responsible for Orange as far as asphalting that road?
Matt and the homeowner will get some estimates and determine what the cost of paving in front of his frontage would be, and he'd pay that cost in as a fee in lieu.
So nothing passed back to the old asphalt?
Correct.
Okay.
And so then in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, when the county comes out to chip seal to here, they'll pull some budget money to pave this amount and use this guy's fee in lieu and get it done.
As I listened to it, I think that's what the concern of the planning and zoning was, is they said, well, that guy's gotta pave and pay for 2 blocks. It wasn't just what was in front of his house, it was 2 blocks, and that was where Brady was, and I agreed with Brady, because he's like, flip, if I gotta pay for 2 blocks. right there.
Well,
We
and
didn't
see- and
discuss
see if-
just in front of the house.
So if these two homes are already in and now you come and build, and I think this is where there's an open question of law and we could take direction from you as to what you'd like us to say. When this person comes in to build, the orange, they're the first person to build down this road since the new standard. So I think one argument would be, well, they're the first ones that building down this road under the new standard. Let's have them pave it, clear down these 2 blocks and in front of their home, because they're the first ones under the new standard. The other argument is, yeah, but it's a new standard. We know they can be required to pave in front of their home, but it's a little more iffy on the 2 blocks. We know we've got a new standard and they're the first ones after the new standard, but let's just have them pave in front of their home and pay it in as a fee in lieu. And I think that what Matt and I feel comfortable with is, since these homes are already here, even though it is a new standard, just have them pay the fee in lieu for their frontage. If you wanted to require them to do the 2 other blocks, we'd give our best legal argument when they challenge it.
I
But
could
think
change
it's
that
safer.
scope by saying I'm the second guy that builds right there, then the first guy built, and he's only paying fee in lieu in front of his house, and then that orange is the second one to come in, and now we're saying he's gotta pay for the gap? That doesn't make sense.
Now, one of the things.
Before we move on, I just want to say, that's why Matt and I are on the same page, that in this scenario that you're talking about, there's already homes down the road. We're changing the standard. This guy comes to build. Let's just have him pay the fee in lieu for their frontage.
That's logical.
And I agree, but that was not what,
That's what I tried to explain, but we were on Zoom and didn't take this
Now,
long.
are we all on the same page, that when we're showing the yellow house, that is his property? That's not the little half acre that he's building on, is that correct?
Yeah, let me do this to make it clear.
He's got to pave on his property line from one side of it to the other, and I think we got it in our mind that the only part.
There's his house.
Right there.
He's got to pave the whole frontage.
You've got to pave the length of your property.
And if this were a road that turns right here, he'd need to pave from here to here and from here to here. You pave your frontage.
I'm glad you clarified that, because if we're talking who wants to go for Greenbelt, then we're gonna be paving in front of 6 acres probably.
I think that explanation would have been cleared. I think we would have a different outcome out of
Exactly,
play zone.
because it
I
was
believe
totally.
you.
And that's very logical, and I don't think that is putting a burden on anyone to have to pay for somebody else. Because if the road isn't there yet, to me, it's very logical. Hey, I'm happy to pay for everything in front of my area, so here's the money, so that within so many years, someone between yellow and blue comes in and they build, then my money's there, and then they collect their money, and then the county can maybe come in and bring everything to that standard, all the way through as far as till the next development. But the money will be there to do that, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's as logical as can be to me.
I think one of the hard parts is the current code says the 4th house.
Yeah.
So you build 1, 2, 3, and now you're lucky number 4. The code says you gotta pave all the way past the other 3 houses all the way back. And I can't remember if John and I were, but it's a little harder to say that that's your impact. So this way we could have one house, on a gravel road, or 2 houses, and it's easier if everyone pays their fair share as you go down the gravel road or wherever you may build, as opposed to some guy comes down in the future and now he has to absorb the cost of all the 3 people before him.
Now, the situation was in the past, unless I'm wrong, we required them to improve the gravel road. They had to go to the 20 foot wide, and they had to put some base and everything. So they aren't scot-free. They did pay a percentage of that road to get it to the point where it can be paved.
Correct.
And I think that's been in effect for almost 10 years or better, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been in there. So ours are the same way. Even if you're doing a fee in lieu of it's just the asphalt, you're still gonna have to build that road to the minimum standards of emergency services for the fire, ambulance, garbage truck, all those. You just don't have to put that asphalt on the top. That's what the fee in lieu of, it's not the whole road. So the $9,000 example for a 300-foot lot, that's the fee in lieu of cost. The rest of it, you're still gonna have to improve your shoulders, you're still gonna have to improve the drainage, you're still gonna have to bring in the pit run if it's required, and the road base, and create us a nice road along the frontage of your property.
And with that other scenario clarified, I want to come back and make sure that we haven't muddied the water on this scenario, where if you are the first one down, we would ask you to pave the gap, because you are creating the need.
If you're the first one.
If you're the first one.
No matter
You're the
how
first
far.
one.
If it's
Correct.
3
If-
blocks, doesn't
If
matter.
you're 3 blocks, if you're a mile down, we didn't need a county road that services a home that's paved until you built.
Now, can that person, if they so desire, can we work on a payment schedule on the fee in lieu, or is that absolutely due at the time of the permit is issued?
Under your ordinance is written today that doesn't provide for a payment schedule. I don't know that that means we couldn't
And that would be hard.
have discretion
hard
to
to
do
do.
that.
The payment.
It'd be hard to
But if I'm a new homeowner and I'm down to scratch and everything else, and then all of a sudden I come in here and I find out I got a $30,000 road, then there goes my house. But if I could do a payment or something, I still have hope. All I'm saying is
Your ordinance doesn't prohibit a payment plan either. It doesn't talk about a payment plan, and your administrative folks have some
if
discretion,
they
I'm
have
sure.
12 years before they use it, then I'd argue, why couldn't I pay that?
But that would then have to be encumbered to the property, because those properties are sold.
And I agree.
And then that would have to go with it in any, boy, is that, I hope that.
I think that, when you start to talk about, I think that would complicate things to too great a degree to do a payment plan.
Well, we're talking about that on those same lines. Back to the previous, let's just say we're all good and people are paying us a lot of payment in lieu of as they're building, and we're starting to hold a bunch of money. Matt and Joel, what's our plan in the next 12 years? I mean, we're on a 6-year rotating schedule, but are we gonna just start holding a lot of money that then we're gonna have to start refunding because we're not paving the road? I mean, we get down the road, people give us a whole bunch of payment in lieu of, 12 years later, we're just sending the money back to them because we haven't paved a bunch of road. What's our plan to pave additional mileage?
Your plan is to give them a bigger road budget so they can pave the gaps.
Dear Lord, I gotta raise taxes.
Way to go.
I don't know another answer than that.
And I just was
Matt might
wondering,
have
do
one.
we have a,
If we seen an area that had a lot of payment in lieu's and the checkerboard was there, we definitely wanna try to put those on our capital improvement plans if they're not part of the maintenance rotation, and try to do those as quickly as we can. If you're getting long roads with one house and it stays like that, and, that maybe that's not the best interest, but we're hoping to bring those back to the council on a year-by-year basis, so you guys can see our plan, and if you guys have some input on, hey, we know that this is happening, can you guys rotate this around? We're hoping to get you guys more involved in those long-term plans of where we're going and what we're doing as far as chip seal and paving the roads.
There are also, I know with the electrical, Rocky Mountain Power, things like that, when you put in, used to be, when you would have, for example, to bring the electricity to your property, anyone that came in a certain amount of time, so many years thereafter, then also had to come and help, and basically paid to you. There was some cooperation there that happened, if there's so much time.
Within 5 years, you got
something like that be worked out too.
So we've talked about that, and it's not part of this ordinance, but we've kind of anticipated that it may become part of another ordinance, which would be that if this developer here, this homeowner, pays for the gap, they're often called pioneering agreements, that then there's an agreement that the county would then, as the people come in and fill in the gap, that they be required to pay back to the original person their portion. It's been enough of a project to get us to here, but we anticipate that if you wanted to have there be a pioneering agreement mechanism, that we could next look at the drafting an ordinance that would allow for that.
I see this also, for example, that's just one, we're looking at just like one home here, one home there. Would that incentivize then a developer to maybe come in there and say, hey, there's 85 acres. Okay, the guy who owns that whole thing, in order to pay that much pavement, I need to have 8 homes up there. Are we gonna all of a sudden get 8 homes built in the county type of deal? Is it gonna incentivize that kind of to, use up the land just so that we can afford to do it? And then the other thing I had is, we alluded to this one earlier in another discussion, was what happens, it's going to encourage to build from like within cities and out. You're gonna be pushing that develop incrementally as we go along because of these costs. Can I ask you what happens when we have payment in lieu's, which I talked with you earlier, and all of a sudden we're gonna annex that? And you go, oh, we have payment in lieu's for these things. Does that payment in lieu monies then go to the city?
I don't think it has to, under the ordinance as written, because there's no state statute that I'm aware of that says if you're holding monies and we annex you, you have to give us your monies. So
right now they would be tied.
The way I read it is that money is attached to that road. It isn't attached to a fund. Am I wrong in understanding it that way?
Yeah, so this is a new question, but I'm continuing to think it through. I think, well, under the ordinance, we have 12 years to use it to pave that frontage. If it gets annexed in, at that point, we can anticipate that unless we are going to tell Smithfield City we'll come and pave that road with the money we've got, where at that point we'll say, well, it's not ours anymore. We know that even after 12 years, we're not going to have used it, and we'll just refund it to the owner at that point. I think that's how it would have to play out.
Your point is well taken, though, is that will encourage larger lots. Not only by the developer, but if I own ground that is 3 miles down and I have no choice, but that's the closest point I can build, I'm talking 80 acres, I'm gonna say, flip. If the first home pays for 3 miles, I'm gonna put in as many homes as I can. So I'll be here to planning and zoning saying, rezone it, now I just cluster a bunch of houses there.
Well, and we ought to say that this requirement is triggered when someone comes in to build. It's also triggered when you subdivide. So when the developer of 80 acres comes in to subdivide to get ready, that's when they've got to put in the road or pay a fee in lieu. And so then it can be spread across all of the lots.
Subdivider might say I can do, if I got 80 acres, I could do 8 10-acre lots. Or if I'm saying I got to build a home, it becomes 5-acre lots, or R5. It's his focus to capture that cost if he's down there. I'm just following what Dave's talking.
But then I start thinking at that point that apparently then growth then is controlled through the zoning laws versus just the road laws.
Yes.
Isn't that what we're really trying to get to?
We're trying to get to where those questions are decided much more based on your zoning than based on road requirement.
But A10 and R5, I can manipulate that pretty good.
But to Nolan's point, right, instead of one house getting built, now you have incentivized 10 houses.
10 or 8 or
because there's no
16.
way you're just gonna build one. You're just not gonna do it because you've got that 80 acres of frontage. Now you're gonna go, I want this house here, but in order to do it, now I'm gonna have to put in those additional 10, and I'm gonna be, before planning and zoning, I'm gonna ask for rezones. Now we have exacerbated the development pressure.
Encouraged development.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that we've never ever been able to get in an ordinance that we've talked a lot about, and we've heard a lot about, but back when we did the 2-lot and the 5-lot and the 10, or the 2 acre, the 5 acre, and the 10 acre agricultural situation, the whole way that was gonna happen is if we were given the opportunity on some farm that had 80 acres, not to divide the 80 acres into 2-lot subdivision, but to be able to use the cluster idea, and that way you could preserve all the farmland except for a 1/2 acre for 10 homes. a half acre per home for 10 homes, and that way you'd have them in a corner and all the rest of the agricultural land still in agriculture. That was a good idea, but we've never been able to get to the point of that cluster development.
And that was the spirit of the RU2, RU5.
That's exactly right. That was the reason why that was done, and we were gonna do that very year. And I think it's been 14 years ago or something else. We just never could quite get to that point. We were still worrying about these roads and all this other kind of stuff.
Well, and if I cluster, then my frontage is smaller, because I can square off that land, can I not?
No,
You
you'd have to pave the
develop
whole parcel, wouldn't you?
the whole piece.
You'd have to take the whole 80-acre parcel.
The whole 80-acre subdivision.
Yeah.
But the key to it is if you cluster development, you're able to take the development element of that 80 acres, you're able to put it in a small area, so you have less roads running everywhere, and everybody's happy because they got open space other than their neighbors that are right by them.
Or wells and septic tanks being,
Well,
you gotta watch that.
welcome to Cache Valley.
Yeah.
There are 3 other points on this that I'd want you to know before you vote on it in whichever way you vote on it. One is regarding Resolution 2015-20, which we've discussed in the past, including in executive session. In the gap between your workshop and county council meeting, I had an email and a phone call from the same attorney who's threatening litigation on Resolution 2015-20 to see what is the status of things, and I'll give him an email or a call tomorrow. The mechanism for returning the money, if it came to that, we've held it 12 years and now we need to return it. I used the state statute on impact fees, which can only be held 6 years and then they have to be returned if it hasn't been used. And there's just a whole scheme there for how you hold it, how you return it, and who you return it to. I just copied that from state code. I figured it was probably well debated and thought through at that stage, and we've had some discussion today that there are some other options, and maybe it isn't perfect, but that's the source of that part of the ordinance. The other part is, how did we decide on 12 years? The ombudsman and I are in agreement that since the reason why we can ask them to pay is because they've created a need. If there's a need for the road to now be a certain way, if we hold that money for 40 years and never do anything with it, there's a pretty good argument they could make in court to say there was no need if you never used it for 40 years. And thus, the impact fee statute does say you got to give it back after 6 years. The question then is, how far can you push that and still have a reasonable argument in front of the court that, no, we still used it within a reasonable amount of time to say that it was filling a need. And I think that based on our rotation of maintenance and how quickly we're able to address different areas in the county and improving the roads, we'd have a good argument that 12 years keeps it a constitutional amount of time. Can't guarantee that. Salt Lake County does this and they have no time limit. They just take your money and then they'll develop the road when they get to it. I think that that's problematic and they'd have a problem if they were challenged. I don't think that 6 years is our deadline. I don't think we can leave it open-ended. Matt and I feel like we could make a good argument for 12 years, but we can't guarantee what the outcome would be on that. If you wanted to say, let's give 14 years and we'll make our best argument, great. If you want to be safer and pull it back to 8 or 10 years, you could do that as well, and it'd just be a bigger burden on Matt's folks to get the money used in time. But that's why we're at 12 years.
John, I appreciate that you, that you called and talked to the private property ombudsman to make sure that we're protecting our private property rights in our county, so I appreciate that.
Sure.
Point that out.
Would you clarify pioneering? Are you against that?
I'm for it. I just haven't had the bandwidth to get an ordinance in front of you that would allow for it.
To me, that would soften the blow to a
It might
landowner.
soften the blow.
The landowner who can say, well, if somebody builds in here a certain time, I get to recoup some of my cost of that.
The inherent problem with that, even if we do it, and I'm not opposed to it, I don't think I'm for it, but you're the policymakers, is that you still have to then, I would think, put a deadline on it. Anybody that comes in the next 10 years and develops in the gap has to share the cost. Or is it 5 years? Or is it 12? And somebody might just wait out the deadline. Honey, we can wait another year before we build, and then they're out. So there's no perfect solution, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
But it's just like the fee in lieu. If at 10 years, and I got 2 years, I would say to the county, check your fee in lieu, and if we're close, it's probably better to asphalt that and build the road rather than lose the money in fee in lieu.
Exactly, yeah.
I would be in favor of looking into that really closely too, and being able to put this in this ordinance. Would it slow it down that much to review that and see if it's a possibility that if we build the road, then somebody else would have to?
You're expecting a phone call tomorrow?
I got the phone call
You got
today.
the phone call today.
It would slow it down enough that I think we risk litigation.
We could just amend it later, could we not?
That's what I would
Yeah.
recommend. And, yeah, that's what I would recommend.
I think it's a great discussion.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think this is really,
Well, it clarified a lot of things. A lot of things that were unclear, I think, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and clarified it to us. So unless there's further discussion, I'll open it up to consideration of a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion, starting with the, one of my favorite sayings is there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. So I'll make a motion that we
Waive the rules first.
waive the rules and approve ordinance 2021-02.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
hang on,
Oh.
is that how we do that? Or do we, I thought we always said we uphold the decision of the, well,
In this case, we're not upholding the
We're not.
decision.
that's why we are.
Yeah.
The ordinance is to
We
repeal
are
the resolution.
approving the ordinance as written.
Okay. Well, now there's two
That
parts.
reminded me of
Yeah,
something.
there's two parts to this.
As it is in front of you, unfortunately, I didn't.
Sorry. Go back.
No.
I have to vote that one down.
Sorry about that, Paul.
That's all right. I can.
The last whereas clause in the ordinance that's in front of you says, whereas the Planning Commission has recommended adoption. I think if you're going to adopt this tonight, your motion ought to be to strike that last whereas clause and then adopt the ordinance.
That's what we need to, but we want to give them thanks for their work. I mean,
They worked hard on it.
And I'll say this one other thing, just so that you've got all of what I've considered as well. You expressed last month, when we said, oh, we need to get this through the Planning Commission and bring it back to you, you expressed that you wanted it to come back and have a public hearing in front of you. You're not required to do that. There is a hearing in front of the Planning Commission required. It's happened. No one showed up to say anything. We don't have it in front of you now with a public hearing. If you still wanted to do a public hearing, you'd need to set that for next time and push it off 2 more weeks. If you want to do that, I think I can talk to an attorney tomorrow and let him know what's happening, and we'd be okay. But I'm okay if you act on it tonight. I just wanted to remind you that you had asked for a public hearing.
Okay, thanks.
And one other
And I think we did discuss that a little bit. Decided since it had a public hearing already with the Planning Commission, that there was adequate opportunity for the public to express their opinions.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify that this ordinance does include the repeal, right? It
Yeah.
includes that repeal
Yep.
process of 2015-20.
Yep.
Either that or we could do it as a separate.
Well, let's vote my motion down and have Dave redo it.
I believe, so it's one ordinance that does both. You repeal and then we establish that road standard, all in one, because
Isn't
Okay.
this all in one document, though?
Yes,
I'm a
it
little
is.
confused by
But we
that.
need to strike some language in that document, right?
Well, the last
Planning
whereas,
Commission didn't approve it.
just the last whereas.
Correct. It's all in one document. The ordinance with the new road manual is an exhibit to the ordinance. And so you can, the motion ought to be, if you're planning to vote in favor of it, a motion to strike the last whereas clause in the ordinance. And then
Approve the ordinance.
And adopt
So
it.
just amend the motion.
Yeah, do you want to?
I'll amend the motion to include striking the paragraph that says, whereas the planning commission has recommended adoption of the proposed revisions and updates to the manual of roadway design and construction standards and the county code. So my motion is to strike that language.
Would you accept that as a friendly
I
amendment?
would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. Second still hold?
Do we have to second the friendly?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Well, I was
All
the
right, let's
second,
vote
so-
again. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, it passes.
And Mr. Chairman, just make a vocal public thanks to the planning and zoning notes.
Oh, yeah.
They vetted it, and it was not, when I watched them, I watched the video, and I sat there and I thought, oh my lands, they're saying the same things that I said 20 years ago when I was on planning and zoning. And it was like deja vu, but it was, but they were betting it, they had the same heartburn and private property rights, all these things, and that we've had the same discussion. It was really good.
But I think John's right, that doing it by Zoom, they didn't capture that in front rather than the gap.
Yeah. Well, without question, we give a hearty and heartfelt thanks to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They have a very difficult job. And I served on a Planning and Zoning Commission for 13 years, I understand. So it's not an easy job to be able to vet all of these things and serve on a quasi-judicial body like they have to do. So, thank you, Planning and Zoning Commission, wherever you are. Okay. Moving on now. Let's go back to 7A, election of council chair and vice chair for 2021. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate for the chairman, now my mind goes blank, our vice chair.
Okay.
I can't think of it right now.
This is Gina Worthen.
There we go.
This is Gordon Zillis.
Every once in a while, that just goes blank, and I cannot think of it. So I'm sorry, Gina, but you're my best friend, and I just forgot.
No worries, that happens to me too.
Nominate her as the chair, though, rather than the chairman.
Yeah, chairs.
Yeah, I guess we can be politically correct. That'd be good. The chairperson.
Okay. Nomination's been made.
Second.
You're seconding? Okay. All in favor of Gina Worthen to serve as chair of the county council next year for 2021, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I move to nominate Paul Borp as vice.
I was going first. I was gonna nominate Barbara, so we can get Barbara and Gina going.
I wondered about that too.
I think that'd be fun. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. I was talking
I'll
first.
second your nomination of Barbara.
I think we should do Barbara.
We would sure have a sweet group at the head.
Yeah, we would. Okay, a nomination's been made for Barbara to serve as vice chair for 2021. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? We're hoping for some good parties from you.
Oh, I don't have to be in charge of parties anymore.
That's right.
Simon is our.
See, Dave, I figured she needed something to do now the Better Days 2020 is done.
Not so sure of that.
Okay, we, under 13, we have other business, but I'm going to suggest, we have a lot of things in limbo right now, and I'm going to suggest that perhaps we defer the items under other business to our next meeting, because we are going to have a new county executive, who serves on a lot of these boards and committees and assignments.
Not by the next meeting, by the first one in February, you
Okay,
should have.
I'll defer, let's suggest we defer it till the first meeting in February.
So they'll just be, what, 10-month goal, 11-month goals? then?
Yep.
A lot of work.
And we'll determine if what changes need to be made to council members, boards, and committees and department assignments at that time also, because we'll probably have some fresh faces. And so, is there any opposition to that action? Okay. Unless I've missed something else, I think we just have council member reports. Dave, what have you got?
You know, we're on the ordinance review committee, 3 of us, Gina and Barbara and I, and that's a good committee, by the way. It's a highly sought after, and but it's actually it's a committee that, you know, I'm seeing the effectiveness of that really strengthen. I think it's becoming. I guess what I'm saying is I think that we're getting even things here that are more insightful. We're getting more detail from it, and we're able to make better decisions because of what's being worked out there.
I agree, Dave.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, and that's really all I had.
Thank you, Dave.
Oh, and then just again, a previous thanks for Executive Butters.
Yep.
I hate to see him go. It's been great.
No doubt.
Gordy.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being a chairman for 2 years and doing us a very good job. You was very efficient and very thorough, and I appreciate the job that you've done.
Thank you. You know, it's not hard when you have such wonderful people to work with. I mean, what can you say?
I'm
should have
excited
it
for
easy.
Gina and Barbara. You know, I think Gina and Barbara worked so hard on that women's suffrage and all that kind of stuff that they can do a lot for us.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I appreciate their willingness to serve, and I thank them in advance. That's all.
Barbara.
I want to thank you, Carl, and Gina both for all the work that you've done this past 2 years. Has it been 2 years?
Yeah.
So thank you for all that you've done. I would like to say that as some of you, I've been serving on the homeless committee, but I did as the chair, and I did send in a letter of resignation on that because I was finding out that I couldn't spend, they were wanting like 3 to 7 hours a week in meetings on that, and I just didn't have the time for that. For anybody that is wanting to serve, by state bylaws, they are saying that it has to be an elected official to be chair of that committee. But be aware that if you want to join that committee, that if you are the only elected official there at the meeting at the time, you become the chair. And you don't realize how much time is involved in that. I think there's a lot of value. There was a lot of good done this past year because of the state wanting a master plan, and that was a lot of hard work. And the people that serve on that committee, Jess Lucero and all of those people are amazing. They do an amazing job. But I just couldn't devote the time that needed to be done to that, but I think it's a good committee. I'd like to give kudos to Carly of the Trails Committee. She is really bringing people together to talk about things, and I was on a meeting today with her, and she's getting a good group of people together. They have purchased a trailer for their equipment for trail improvement, and she got that through grant funds, and they're looking at some good things to enhance trail etiquette, you know, as far as mountain bikers versus non-mountain bikers, and also proper way to take care of trails different things like that. So she's doing a grand job, and I think she'll do great. And I enjoy serving on the Ordinance and Review Committee. I really do. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Nolan, you've had so much time to be on the council now. What's your report for us?
Let's say, amen, a women and go home.
Now, that's a good report. Paul?
I thought he was gonna say mistakes were made.
Oh.
Then he ended up here, but anyway, no, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Gina, and thank you, Barbara, for being willing to serve. We really appreciate working with you.
Okay, Gina.
I'll just say, Carl, thank you for your service. You've left some big shoes to fill as chair, and appreciate all that you've done. And Craig Butters, wherever you are, we miss you. You know, it was great having him, and I'm excited for him to move to the state. But man, he leaves a hole here. He was a really great county executive. So that's all.
He was good. Well, I'll just conclude with again thanking this council. There isn't a finer group of people serving in government anywhere, and things are thoughtfully and carefully considered without a lot of emotion and unyielding opinion, but things are done in the right way. I'll also just comment that Dave and I had an opportunity to meet with a group of people who are concerned about the growth of population in the county and where that's going to go, and preserving agricultural land, etc. And that's going to be one of my goals this coming year, is to try to develop a plan to merge the inevitable growth that we're going to have. If we grow just organically at 2.5% per year, in 30 years we'll have over 275,000 people that we'll have to find housing for in Cache Valley. That's without talking about in-migration from other areas. And so this is a very serious thing that we have to determine what's going to be the best way to do that, so that we end up preserving what we love about Cache County so much. So anyway, with that, thank you all, and we will adjourn. Last time I'll do that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Watch me.
I failed.
We failed you.
Be that insightful on many things, though.
No, but it's,
I think you're very
yeah.
insightful.
Yeah,
Appreciate you right away, Nolan.
Thank you for your knowledge.